All right, maybe I can start with a small introduction. Today we have with us Stella and Christina from Offstream. From Offstream, you can see their names. Thank you all for joining. This is going to be a masterclass on tactile and approaches to haptic design. This is a masterclass for the project Sensing, which is a European project we as APR are implementing along with Ibonis in Spain and Gian in Greece. And this is the fifth in this series of masterclasses on the senses. Each expert takes their own approach on their own subject. And today we have Offstream with their unique and very innovative approach to tactility and implementing inclusivity approaches and accessibility approaches for sensory disabled people to cultural projects. So thank you, Christina and Stella, for today. And I think we can start.
Sure. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for this invitation and the chance to talk about this topic today. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And we will do a little bit of an introduction here. So first of all, hi everyone. We are super excited and happy to be here with you, giving a masterclass on touch and haptic perception. We would like to very briefly introduce ourselves. I don't know if you're seeing my screen at the moment. Yeah, okay. All right. So I'm Christina. I'm Christina Vlahu. I am a cultural manager. I have worked in the field of contemporary art and other creative industries for the last 12 years, more or less. And the past almost 3 years, together with Stella, we are running Offstream. And I will invite Stella to introduce herself to you.
Hi, everyone. We're very happy to be here with you, and thank you very much, ABR, for the invitation to join this masterclass. I'm an art historian, and I have worked many years in contemporary art museums, in the Department of Educational Programs, and having contact with many diverse audiences. At some point, I realized that culture and museum experience is not that inclusive as I thought to be. So around 2020, I implemented a project called Mind's Eye, which actually rendered inclusive 10 artworks of the Momus Museum of Contemporary Art collection accessible to persons with visual impairment. This was the point that I realized that this is a very interesting field, and with Christina, we decided to join forces and create Offstream. So we're here with you today to talk about touch and haptic perception. We have created a very dense program, but at any point, feel free to join the conversation. Share your thoughts either via the chat or by raising your hand and turning on your microphone. We'd like to have more of a discussion instead of just talking ourselves about theory and things that we're going to present. And at some point, we are going to ask for your interaction. There's no need to turn on your cameras, but just join the conversation. Thank you, and Christina.
Yeah, so before we tell you more about Offstream and what we do, we would like to hear very briefly from you, who are you and what you do, just to get an idea today who's with us. So just don't be shy, just tell us a hi and a small introduction.
Is there any volunteers to start?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay, cool.
Hi, my name's Brian. I am a theater artist, stage manager, actor, and I work in as a side project, I work as an instructional designer, creating online teaching coursework, that sort of thing, and have been a sculptor in the past. And I'm interested in this because I have a few friends who are visually impaired, and just interested in learning more about how to incorporate art in a way that could help visually impaired people. So,
That's great. Nice to meet you. It's very interesting, and we're really looking forward for your comments, like after the masterclass.
unfortunately, I have to leave an hour early. I have another meeting.
It's okay. Yeah. Anyone else who would like to say hi and a few things about themselves?
Maybe I can go.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, my name is Ozzy. I'm from Cyprus, and I work in communications. So I am a communications associate for EU-funded projects in Cyprus.
Nice, very nice. Thank you.
Maybe on another masterclass, we would talk about the accessibility on digital and communication material as regards to persons with visual impairment. Is any person attending from Spain?
I think I see Jose here. Jose, can you hear us?
Hello, Anna. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Jose.
So, please accept my apology because I attend to the last master class by mobile phone, and the sound is very, very poor. So,
Okay.
but well, my name is Jose. I from Iboniz, Spain. Very excited to get to know more about this haptic touch and after stream. So thank you so much for your collaboration within this project.
Gracias, encantadas.
Okay, I will move forward. I don't know if anyone else wants to say something. It's okay, like it's not obligatory, just to get to know you more or less. So if anyone.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I'm from Cyprus, but
Hi.
I'm currently studying in France. I'm doing my master in arts and cultural management.
Nice.
Yeah, I studied, my undergrad was art history and business management in Glasgow, so I have a bit of knowledge about exhibitions and museums, but I'm very interested in learning how to adapt these traditional models into more accessible and inclusive way models and techniques. So very interested about this seminar. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I think we have Constantina Jacob who wrote a message for you, if you saw that.
Yes, yes. Hello, Constantina. We know Constantina also from other projects. Very happy for you to be here.
Great.
Okay, so I will go on, and if you want, you can just hop in at any time. So thank you so much, and I would like to start saying a few things about the off stream. As you can see from what I also share with you in the presentation, We consider Offstream to be a common place and space for experimentation, new ideas, creativity, and of course, inclusion. So we are a non-profit that is based in Thessaloniki, Greece. And since 2020, more or less, we are focusing on the promotion of a more inclusive and fair, let's say, culture. Our work is around three main pillars. These are culture, education, and of course, inclusion. And what we do very briefly is that we design inclusive systems in museum collections and spaces. And also we do creative and artistic projects that are inclusive. Our main focus audience are people with visual impairment. But when we're talking about inclusion and diversity, we also mean it in a broader sense, of course. So yes, the design of inclusive systems, it includes the museological study, the design and production of tactile aids, audio descriptions for the artworks, special marking of the space and the points of interest in the museum space, relief captions and exhibition texts, and also a training in escort practices and for the museum staff in order to be able to facilitate people with visual impairment. Another, let's say, area of services and projects we do, there are educational events and programs. We design and implement them. So they're all based on the principles of learning by doing and hands-on education, and the combination of the methodology of universal design that we will talk about it a bit later in the presentation. So yeah, like the educational programs are usually through an art medium, and they can be for children, adults, and with or without visual or other sensory impairments. And last but not least, of course, a big part of our work is the advocacy we do for the adoption, let's say, and expansion of inclusive practices in culture, and of course in other aspects of everyday life. So we often give talks about inclusion, we showcase and we give lectures about our work and our methodology. And also we train and educate cultural professionals in being more inclusive in the program and the content they offer to the audience. So I will take you very quickly into like an outline of the content of this masterclass. So there will be a little bit of theory about the sense of touch, a bit of history about the approaches, the tactile and multisensory approaches in museums. We will talk about the methodology of universal design that we very much apply to our projects. Then we will go a bit more specific on the tactile aids, auxiliary aids for people with visual impairment. Then we will explore a little bit and we do a few exercises on the basic procedures used in haptic exploration. We will get a little bit of a way of working when we have to decide what kind of object needs to become a tactile aid. We will see methods of production of tactile aids and some guidelines for the design of the tactile graphics. We will talk very briefly about our approach, and at the end you can find useful links and basic bibliography of everything we will show you today. And of course we have a Q&A if we have time, because as we said, it's a little bit compact, this masterclass, but yeah, just feel free and interrupt us at any time. So I would like to start with a little bit of a fictional scenario. So there is this game that we used to play when we were kids, and I think we are it's very interesting to just have like a fun icebreaker with this, with all of you. It's basically this question, like in a fictional scenario, if you had to lose one of your senses, which one would it be? Like which one you would choose to not ever again feel it in your life? It's a bit, like fictional, as I say, but we are interesting to see, like what would you say? So just like feel free and tell us what comes in mind. Which sense would you choose to sacrifice, let's say? Okay, I see Ozzy. Yeah, hearing. Okay. Anyone else?
Could you tell us
Question.
why you selected hearing?
Hearing again. That's interesting.
Do you have one? Have you ever selected one?
Us, if we,
Yeah.
I mean, now I would say most probably smell. But
Smell.
the funny thing is that after we were discussing about that with Stella, we both remember that like the most common sense that we would like choose to sacrifice when we were kids and we were playing this game, it was the sense of touch. That's why we are using it actually here as an icebreaker. I until now I see just hearing, so okay. It's an interesting experiment. I don't know if anyone else wants to say. Smell. Okay, yeah. We agree. Okay.
I think hearing is, for me, at least it's that, because there are kind of alternatives to how to communicate. So you're not really missing out on everything. Whereas, for example, taste or smell, you can't really get it unless you have it. That was my thinking.
Yeah, it's very personal. I mean, there is no right or wrong in this or anything. It's funny, alternative brains is telling us that touch, because I like food too much.
And I like dancing, so it's a difficult choice. It's a difficult choice.
Yes,
Yeah.
we know.
This is a fictional dystopic scenario, but it's quite interesting. And when we were saying that, okay, we're ready to sacrifice touch, is because, okay, Christina will tell you later, but we thought that it was very limited as a sense, but this is not the truth, actually.
Yeah. Actually, it's impressive, but I will tell you some fun facts about touch. First of all, touch is the first sensation an embryo starts to develop in the womb around 5 weeks. So this is very, very, very interesting, because it's the first sensation that we actually explore the world around us. And we get connected with the person that is carrying the baby and everything. Another fun fact, let's say, that we don't really consider it many times, is that we tend to connect the touch to action that involve the hands. And okay, it's normal because fingers are very sensitive, let's say. There are more sensitive receptors for tactile stimuli. But actually touch is associated with the largest of the sensory organs that we have, and it's actually our own skin, like the entire body, the skin that covers our whole body, which is approximately 2 square meters. So yeah, I'm just sharing this. So I will take you through some insights about touch, a bit of like theory and information about touch. So there are different types of touch. And what do we mean by that is that touch, it allows us to perceive various types of touching sensations, such as stroking, tickling, pressure, pain, heat, cold. There are many types of sensations we are able to identify through touch. But also there are different types of touch in the way we perceive the haptic stimuli. So there is the active touch, which is like, I'm aware I'm going to touch a specific item and I actively do it. So this is the active touch. Then there is the passive type of touch, which is actually right now, like most of you are sitting on a chair. So your whole body is touching the chair, but sometimes you are not very aware of it when you do it. And there is a third, let's say, type of touch that it can be commonly found among persons with visual impairments, but not, of course, not exclusively. And it's called the defensive type of touch. It usually refers to the defensive mechanism we develop when we touch something that is burning, for instance, and we are not aware of it. So the first time we touch it and we realize that this is something that can hurt us, it gets registered as a defensive, let's say, type of touch. We are more restrained in doing it again. Another insight is that it's a cross-modal sensation. So what we mean by that is that previous conception of, let's say, brain organization was that sensory inputs were processed in separate unisensory streams in our brains. However, many brain regions that were previously considered to be specialized for various aspects of visual input are now known to be activated also during tactile or haptic tasks. For example, the region that processes visual motion is also activated by tactile motion, the region in our brain, I mean. Also, another example of this is that there are certain textures could evoke specific tastes or colors, and it's a phenomenon that is called synesthesia. I don't know if you are aware of it or if you ever heard it before. So we can see that actually touch, when we are talking about the sense of touch, usually and for all, actually it applies for all the senses. They are interconnected. They are never completely like separate from each other. Also, touch has a significant emotional impact on human beings. I think you are aware of it. There are like positive and gentle touch can release hormones like oxytocin, and it can promote feelings of trust, social bonding, well-being. And also hugs and handshakes and other forms of physical contact can convey like warmth and emotional connection. Also, touch has a healing power, and a very like common example is the massage that we do in a part of our body that is like hurting, a muscle or anything. Because it promotes relaxation, it can reduce stress, and it can relieve us from pain. Of course, touch is also crucial for human development, especially in infants. Skin-to-skin contact between parents and newborns, for instance, it promotes bonding, of course. It regulates body temperature. It helps with breastfeeding. And it supports the healthy development of the nervous system. Of course, there is a big connection between touch and memory. Touch can evoke very powerful memories and emotions. And the sense of touch is closely linked to the limbic system in our brain, which is involved in processing emotions and memory formation. So touching an object or feeling a particular texture can trigger vivid memories and like produce emotional associations. And of course, there is a reverse phenomenon, like the reverse way is also happening, meaning that we can recall from our memory the feeling of a certain texture or haptic perception. And the most extreme example of this case is, I don't know if you know this phenomenon, it's called the phantom limb sensation. And it occurs to people who have lost a limb, and they may still experience vivid sensations of the missing limb, like warmth, cold, itching, like they never lost this part in a way. Or they can feel that the limb is like in a certain position. So this phenomenon, why I'm mentioning it, is because it truly highlights the complex nature of the brain's interpretation of touch. Another very interesting, let's say, information about touch is it's a way of communication. And I don't mean just the gestures that we do when we greet someone in the street or whatever. We also communicate in more complex, let's say, structures. And the first one I'm going to mention is the sign language for persons with hearing impairments. That they use certain types of not only gestures, but also like touching parts of their face and torso, and there's touch involved in this communication method. Also, there is the Tadoma method of speech for persons who experience both hearing and visual impairment. And it also involves touching in several parts of the hands and the face to communicate words and meanings. And of course, there is the most, let's say, evolved and complex form of haptic communication is the Braille system. That is a system of raised dots that can be felt with the fingertips, and it allows visually impaired individuals to read through touch. It's actually quite common. I'm sure you heard of it again. And it's so expanded, let's say, so like in almost every language, or like most of the languages that are spoken, there is also the equivalent Braille language system for this language. Another interesting fact about touch is that touch plays a fundamental role in social bonding. And studies have shown that a simple touch, such as a handshake or a pat on the back, or other types of haptic communication, can enhance trust and cooperation between individuals. And also, what is interesting here is that the perception of and the interpretation of touch can vary sometimes a lot across different cultures. There are cultural differences in the sense of touch. Some cultures, they have more relaxed boundaries regarding touch, and others might have like a stricter norms and taboos around physical contact. And the other interesting thing about this is that also the perception of touch has been transformed through time, and Stella is going to give you more insights about that later in the masterclass. And last but not least, I have to mention that, especially after what we have all experienced the last 3 years almost, and it's related to COVID-19 pandemic. So there is this concept of touch hunger, as it's more widely known, and it's connected to the fact that touch deprivation could lead to feelings of touch hunger. which is a deep craving for physical contact. So yeah, like what it says, what happens usually is that the lack of touch can impact our mental and emotional well-being. Because as we mentioned before, there is a big importance that touch is bringing in reducing stress and promoting overall health, let's say, and well-being. So continuing from that, I would like to ask you another question. Is like, during the pandemic that we were very limited, especially during the lockdown time, is there anything you missed touching with your bare hands the most? Like, did you have this kind of feeling? Did you have this kind of thought? Yeah, just whomever is interested can just say a few words if you want. I don't know. I think I heard someone talking, but I'm not sure.
No, I was gonna say that I didn't think about it actually during COVID that much, because I had I don't know.
No, it's okay.
For us, it was quite impressive, the being unable to touch, and also while working with persons with visual impairment. It was shocking how much it affected their communication and their interaction with other people, because they rely so much on touch that, for example, when we opened up the first application in the museum that we were working in 2020, June, we were allowed to touch also the tactile aids with using gloves, single-use gloves. So the sensation of touch was so limited using gloves, which was quite, it was not a pleasant experience for them and for everybody to experience through this process. Brian, I don't know, you turned on your camera. Would you like to share something about the deprivation of touch during COVID?
Yeah, well, it was funny. I was just talking to a friend last night about this. It was more nature. Like I was inside, like, during the lockdown. I'm in the US, so we were locked down quite a bit. And it was when I finally went out for the first time and I felt the breeze,
Yeah.
like, and just the natural, like feeling grass under my feet. I was surprised, like how much that affected me. Like I actually started crying a little bit, like it was so emotional. So.
Yeah, it's very strong when we come to realize how much this deprivation affected us in other senses as well. It's quite impressive. Okay, we don't want to recall bad memories, but it was something that has affected our work a lot these years, because we started developing all these things during the COVID era. And everybody was asking us, okay, you are developing tactile aids in a period that you cannot touch actually things, or it is dangerous to touch. So it was quite a challenge for us during that period, and till today, let's say, but okay. So I'm going to share my screen right now as well. And since we are working as, me and Christina on tactile applications that enable persons with visual impairment to experience art, and our work is focused on the area of the museums, I'm sharing this slide with you, and I would like to ask you if does this ring any bell? Do you recall any of these sentences that are written down here, like do not touch the pictures, do not touch the artworks or the frames, Or if you are a wheelchair user, be careful that your footrest doesn't bump on furniture or walls. I don't know if you would like to share, but for us, this has been the museum experience from our first visit in a museum in, I don't know, mine was in my 20s. And until recently, this was the type of experience that we had inside the museums. But we are very happy to share with you that this type of experience has changed and a lot the last decades, but maybe in Greece it arrived a little bit later, I don't know. But we see a gradual transformation through these years. And an interesting fact that we realized while we were diving deeper into the notion of touch through this masterclass is that we realized that the case with the museum hasn't always been like this. So the truth is that museum collection hasn't been curated to be experienced like this in the early museums that appeared during the 17th or the 18th century. Actually, according to Constance Classen, there is evidence pointing the opposite. Early museums, in fact, retained many characteristics of the private collections on which they were based. The museum tour was led by a curator who matched more or less the house tour that might be offered by a host. The curator was acting as a gracious host, was expected to provide information about the collection and offer it to be touched. The museum visitors, as polite guests, were expected to show interest about the collection and touch the objects. By allowing the visitors to touch the objects, the curator enacted ancient notions of hospitality. The first museum collections were comprised mostly by rare and unique objects that the collectors have acquired from exotic places. In their majority, these collections obtained crafted artifacts and objects that appeared very peculiar and curious to the people of the era that had no much experience of traveling to other countries or visiting diverse civilizations. Hence, the collections kept in the cabinets that were called cabinets of curiosity. On the right part of your screen, you can see an image how a cabinet of curiosity from a natural history museum would look like, just to get an idea. So in that context, sight was not efficient to identify peculiar objects, and in a sense was essential to correct any misconceptions created by the sight. But it also provided empirical knowledge. Let's say that an item or an object appeared to be very heavy, but when you lifted it, you realize that it's lighter than you thought. Also, it gave satisfaction of an intimate encounter, like a thrill of getting into contact with the original creators or the past user of this artifact. It also allowed them to access the mysterious powers popularly associated with rare and curious objects. So in such a context, the sense of touch is therefore perceived as annihilating not only space, but also time. Using multiple senses to experience an object in a museum enhance the impression of having comprehended their nature. So this behavior in the museums and the rules of contact with the collections gradually changed over time. More and more collections and museums made their appearance, and a lot of knowledge about how to handle these collections started to be accumulated that led to a gradual change. So the highly differential model of behavior that became the standard in 19th century reflected not only the perceived need to impose order on heterogeneous museum visitors, but also a change in attitude towards the museum content. This privileging of sight as the sensory organ of the intellect was informed by the visual practices and paradigms of modern science. At the same time, as sight was acquiring new importance in cultural practice during the 19th century, it was being positioned at the top of human and social evolution by contemporary scholarships. Influential thinkers such as Charles Darwin, Max Nardot, and later Sigmund Freud contributed to the glorification of sight as the height of civilized adult perception and the deprecation of touch as the sensory resource of primitives and children. If sight was the sense of civilization, then it was fitting that the museum as primary manifestation and instrument of civilization should be a supremely visual sight. The shift into a more multisensorial approach did not happen at once, but we, since 19th century, let's say until the past decade, we have been experiencing museums and culture through museums through vision. And that's why these populations, persons with visual impairments or blindness, did not and do not still have so much interest visiting a museum. And we're very happy that this is starting to change, has started to change. First, this change was manifested through the arts during the 60s and the 70s, but also Art Beyond Sight in USA has contributed a lot to this direction. They have been fostering a dialogue between museum practitioners and cognitive researchers since 1987. Because their original goal was to make museum and visual culture accessible to persons with visual impairment, much of this effort was focused on developing multisensory tools for blind audiences, such as tactile images, verbal descriptions, touch collections, and sound images. They also developed the first guidelines for verbal description, and periodically they are updating these guidelines frequently. The role of touch in the museum has been expanded significantly as more and more studies have pointed to the social, cognitive, and even therapeutic value of handling objects. So the latest decades, we're experiencing a new emphasis on experiencing the properties of things directly. And this has taken a shape that has revolutionized the ways in which the material legacy of the past and other culture is now being interpreted. We're going to share a few examples that we have gathered very briefly just to showcase this shift. There is a series of museums around the world that they are called Dialogue in the Dark. If you ever be in Hamburg, don't hesitate, just jump in and experience this unique experience. As far as we know it, this Dialogue in the Dark was also implemented in Athens, I believe around 2008. And the concept is that several persons with visual impairment are guiding you through the space. You do not wear a mask, but the space is totally black. You are navigating inside their space by activating other senses, such as the smell or the sound. They play a major role in this experience. It's quite interesting and quite intense. So here are a few images that we are sharing with you. This is the entrance and also a big wall with bright dots on the wall. The bright alphabet in German actually is this image. And they also have interactive games that you can play and test your ability to touch objects and synthesize. Here are a few images that we have gathered from other museums in Greece and abroad. From your left to the right, you can see an educational, let's say, traveling kit that is accompanying the visitor through their tour inside the Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens. And it includes several artifacts and tactile aids that have been created in order to bring persons in contact with the Cycladic civilization of the prehistory. Another image is showing a small clay sculpture from an excavation that was found near Chania in Crete, here in Greece again. Also, there is an image of an interactive station at the museum in Marseille in France, where you are invited not only to touch the tactile representations of flowers that are presented here, but also to smell them. So it is quite interactive and quite interesting to have this such an experience. The last image is from Humboldt Forum in Berlin, in Germany. It is a tactile representation of an artifact of, and I don't know from which area of the world, but it was quite unique. You had the ability to see it not only as a hologram, but also to touch it as a different type of representation. So would you like to share with us if you have ever visited a museum where you were able to touch the exhibits and describe to us this experience?
Personally, if I can start, I think I have never been allowed to. I remember I'm also extra afraid of getting close.
This is another question. If you were invited to touch, would it be easy for you to do so, or would you hesitate?
I don't know, I would hesitate. I'm thinking already about all the damage my hands can do to a century-old frame or picture, thinking like a first standard that I'm never, I don't know if this embedded fear will go away immediately.
This is what we are receiving from the audiences through our work every day, and we realize how much embedded is that notion of do not touch in our brains, because we are asking persons to touch the objects. They're addressed to all visitors. A kid can touch it, I can touch it, a blind person can touch it, but everybody is very hesitant because they're afraid that they are going to break it or change it or destroy it. I don't know. Yeah, George, would you like to share your experience?
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hi.
I think if it was like a room that everybody could touch the objects and it was a dedicated space, I would feel more comfortable personally. But no, having exhibits mixed around the space, yeah, it would also freak me out. I have to agree with Anna on this.
I don't know, my experience is quite different. I was always very curious. Whenever anybody was not seeing me, I was touching things that I was not supposed to touch. I don't know. So
it's just exactly the same for me. And for instance, I remember very vividly the first time I touched something in the museum. It was in 2008. In the Archaeological Museum here in Thessaloniki, they made a small structure where they had a little piece of amphoreas. That it was like it was an original piece, and it was very small and not so important, I guess. But you had the chance to touch it, like and see the texture. And I remember I got so excited by the fact that I could go and touch it that I just ran there and I grabbed it. I mean, nothing happened, but like nothing bad, happened. But it was an experience I will remember, and it's funny because it was so like little and nothing super crazy and impressive as a thing, let's say, as a little piece. But the fact that I was set free to touch it finally, it was quite an experience. I really liked it.
So if you ever come in contact or get across an artifact in a museum that you are allowed to touch, don't hesitate. We are inviting you to do so. And just if you want, you can share your experience with us by sending an email. I don't know. Because what
I see some comments here in the chat. Constantina is writing, like I think in Berlin, in DDR Museum, in East Germany. It had rooms like an ordinary home at that era, and you were able to open and search cabinets, furniture, turn on the radio, TV, read magazines. It was very fun since I could explore the everyday life of that people. Yeah, it's actually very interesting. Yeah, you get more in contact with as an experience, let's say.
And also because it relates to our work, and this shift has been introduced lately. If you're not touching the objects, they are going to take them away. So please, whenever you find an object, try to touch it and explore it, because this will change again to the site only.
Yeah, and actually, I will say just that, and I will stop because we can go on forever. Is the fact that you can, especially in an example of an artwork, the fact that you can touch an artwork, it really adds to the whole experience. And I'm talking about like a personal experience of working in the Museum of Contemporary Art for years. I knew the main collection, the permanent collection, like almost all the artworks. I've worked with them, and like I've done like tours and stuff. But when we did the pilot project, the Mind's Eye project in this collection, and we entered like 10 artworks accessible from the collection, I was amazed by properties of the artworks that I have never realized, or like yeah, like it was the first time I was realizing something was like that on this artwork that I saw like 100 times. So it really
also sharing an experience here at the Museum of Illusions in Zagreb, that you were encouraged to interact with the objects. Yes, this type of interactivity we are looking for in the things that we are designing, and whatever you are going to see now from what Christina is going to present, keep in mind that they are addressed to all visitors, not only to blind and visually impaired. So yeah, I'm turning on my mic.
Yes, so the question is like, how do you render a museum space or a museum collection accessible? What we are like very extensively using is the methodology of universal design. It's something we apply to almost everything we design. So what is universal design? So according to the Institute for Human-Centered Design, universal design is a framework for the design of places, things, information, communication, and policy that focuses on the user in the widest range of people, operating in the widest range of situations without special or separate design. This is very important. More simply, it's a human-centered design of everything and with everyone in mind. And that is also like it's a very inclusive process. So it's also called inclusive design and design for all. Here you can see the main universal design principles. You can read through them. For me, I usually prefer to showcase an example so that people can understand the essence and the principles of universal design. For me, a very interesting example and object that encapsulates the whole thinking in the universal design is Twin Vision books. I don't know if you have ever heard about the term. Twin Vision books is books that they have. Actually, I have one that we produced, the catalog for the Museum of Contemporary Art here. I don't know if you can see very well, but it has this is the cover. It has printed the information, but also it has another transparent layer of tactile braille, which actually gives the same information, but in braille fonts. And also inside the catalog, it's the same approach to everything. So we have, for instance, an image of an artwork, and there is also this layer of tactile UV print that you can explore the main parts of the artwork. Here it's the text and the information about the artwork that is also printed in a layer of braille. And here there is a QR code that you can scan with your phone and listen to the audio description of the artwork, because you need a guidance to understand what you're touching. So basically, also if you notice, the fonts are quite big. So why I'm showing you this is actually this item. It's an item that it's designed from the start, from scratch, having in mind different types of audience group, and including all of them in one single object that doesn't require any further modification in order to facilitate various types of social groups. This book can facilitate people who experience any sort of visual impairment, can facilitate people with hearing impairment, can also be very useful for people, like for old people who usually their vision is degrading, so they need larger letters to read. Kids can interact with the book because it's also very interesting to touch it. And also, we know that this kind of books, because they use a little bit of simplified language, they can also facilitate people, for instance, who are not very familiar with, let's say, Greek language. So yeah, with one item, basically you unite groups with different needs. So it's a nice way of like meeting all these people around this object that can actually bring interaction between them as well. So of course, if I'm not, if there is something you don't understand or you want to know more, please interrupt me, like feel free and ask whatever comes in mind. So after this brief mentioning of this methodology of universal design, I would like to talk a little bit about the tactile auxiliary aids, or tactile graphics, as we call them. Actually, the Twin Vision catalog that I just showed you is one type of what we call tactile graphics and auxiliary aids. So what are tactile graphics? So essentially they are graphs used in conjunction with detailed verbal description. So basically tactile graphics transcribe visual images into tactile language. And we stretch a lot the fact that it's important to be used in combination with verbal narratives that can guide the user through the representation in a logical and orderly manner. A common mistake, or like not mistake, but misunderstanding about the tactile graphics is that a tactile graphic is never actually a straight reproduction of the image or print graphic or artwork. It's not a tactile photocopy of the original. A tactile graphic, it's actually not more simplified, but it wouldn't include all the information that there is in an original artwork, because it could create a lot of clutter and confusion sometimes. So there is a specific methodology in that. Let's see a little bit some types of tactile graphics so that you get a better idea of what we are talking about. First type, and very big for us, let's say, we work a lot with that, is the tactile representations, especially for artworks of museum collections. So here in the right side of the presentation, you can see images from projects we have done, where you can see the original artwork and the tactile representation next to it. And also on the side, you can see a little bit of information in Braille and QR codes. This is a close-up of this the previous tactile representation that we showed you. And then there is another type with another technique. Also, there is tactile 3D models. Usually the tactile representations are mainly 2D, let's say. When we talk about 3D models, they are, you can touch them from many angles, and we commonly use them in creating artworks that are sculptures or have like shapes. Here you can see our collaborators, Fanny Tsikura and Thanasis Sideris. They are both people with visual impairment, and we are collaborating with them the last 3 years. They have been with us from the start. Another, let's say, more complex system of tactile graphics, let's say, it's the museum educational boxes. These are boxes that are using interaction, and like, for instance, here you can see 3 museum educational boxes we commissioned to Katerina Bacaliu for the approach of 3 artworks created by the artist Takis. So Katerina Bacaliu, she approached the whole theme with a series of 3 different museum educational boxes, and with which each user is invited to interact and discover the artistic values that apply to its artwork. And they can experiment with the unseen forces of electromagnetism that the artist Takis is very much known for using in his artworks, and sound. And also they can interact. This is the most important part, that they choose the amount and the level of interaction they will have with the tactile graphic. For instance, here there was a scale of the 7 colors that were rendered accessible through tactile representation of the wave of the color, and also the sound. And sorry, I'm going a bit quickly, but yeah. Another type of tactile graphics, let's say, it's the original artworks or objects. This is actually a case that is very preferable if, I mean, there are certain, let's say, requirements to be happening for that to work. But when in cases that we have the chance to actually be able to touch the original artwork or object, it's very much preferable, but it needs to be well thought of. So yes, here you can see an artwork from the Museum of Contemporary Art that actually visitors can touch from the original. Another form of tactile graphics are the tactile maps. These are not usual maps as we know them. It's more of a plan of the space. It could be in an inside or an outside space, but it's done in a way that it's a person with a visual impairment could understand the route that they can follow inside the spaces of interest to go to the points of interest. That would be tactile representations of artworks, or let's say other points of interest. And of course, you have an appendix on the side that explains in Braille the whole system and the map. Last but not least, the braille fonts. These are legends that we use next to the artwork. You have these are inclusive type of information because there is an audio description. It's printed and it's also it has tactile braille on it, so the information is accessible to everyone. Here it's how we apply it on the tactile representations that we are creating for museums. And here it's again with a braille tactile system, but it's transparent, so you just see the user touching it. So yes, I will hand it over to Stella now to give a little bit of insight on how we can explore what is the manual of tactile exploration.
Cristina, Telia, thank you. So now we are moving on more practical information about how we tactilely explore objects, not only us, but mostly persons with visual impairment. I don't know if you are tired because we are already 1 hour during our masterclass. At some point, we will need to take a break. Okay, maybe we will do that after the exercises we are planning to have. So, first, I'd like to start with the fact that people's capacity for distinguishing between different textures varies considerably. Not all of us experience the same information when we are touching a piece of fabric or a wool pullover or, I don't know, a wooden table. This has to do with our own experiences and how we perceive textures in general. For persons that do not experience visual impairment, meaning that the sight plays the major role in our system, the eye can distinguish any number of patterns, and we usually at a glance receive all the information that we need to take about the texture or the characteristics of an object. The fingers and the fingertips can only perceive the difference between a few textures. So we need to keep in mind that these processes vary to each person, the experience I mean, and also when it comes to identifying objects that are not familiar to us, most of the times it takes a lot of time to explore these things and understand what we are touching. That's why we are very persistent about the creation of tactile graphics or objects for visually impaired. They need to be accompanied by verbal description. So, if, I don't know, we have invited you to gather a few objects from your household. So we are about to perform an exercise together from what you have gathered. And if you haven't gathered any objects, it's okay. You can just grab something that is around you, and we are going to do the exercise together. So we are inviting you to tactily explore an object and experience yourself the process of tactile exploration. You are going to need one object. It doesn't matter how this object is. If you have something unfamiliar, it would be great to test this unfamiliar object right now, just to see how this process evolves. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. I'll give you some time to gather these items. So what I'm asking you to do is to take the object. Let's say that the object is this book. And we invite you to write down the movements, the gestures that you can see here on the image that you have used to explore this object. Maybe you used, no, let's take a step back and explain the movements maybe. Sorry about that. So the first movement is what we call lateral motion, and it's performed by touching an object with your hand and touching its surface, so you can understand its texture. Is it smooth? Is it very bumpy? It's try to understand the patterns that it has or its texture. The other movement that we apply in order to understand the temperature of the object is a static contact, what we call, and it is performed with the entire hand. You touch the object like this, and you sense the temperature. Is it warm? Is it cold? Maybe if the temperature is the same as your body, maybe you don't feel any difference. The third motion or movement is the enclosure, what we call enclosure. This helps you identify the global shape of the object and its volume. Is it big? Is it small? Does it have a specific design? Another information about the hardness or the softness of an object we're getting from the pressure of the object. So we can feel this type of information. Another important information that we receive with unsupported holding is its weight. And this is very interesting because many times we think something is heavier than we think when we lift it. And the last gesture that we are going to test is the contour following. So to understand the global shape of the object, is it rectangular? Is it triangle? Is it round? What is its shape, its exact shape? So I'm going back to the exercise, and we are going to discover together. Let's give 5 minutes to this process for each of you. So you're invited to touch, explore the object, write down which movements you used to explore this object. Maybe you use only the static contact to test its temperature. Maybe you have tried all the movements in order to wholly identify the object. And after you finish with the tactile exploration of the object, we would like you to write down if you used another sense apart of touch in order to identify it. Maybe you have smelled it, maybe you have rattled it and you heard it. Was it a combination of senses, or you worked just with a sense of touch? And last, we would like you to write down a few words that describe the object. So, yeah, let's give it some time, 5 minutes. If you have finished earlier and you would like to share, we could go on with that also. Maybe it's a lot of time, 5 minutes to do this exercise. Okay, does anyone would, yeah, George, would you like to go first? Do not show the object to us. Do not show us the object, just describe it first.
Okay,
tell us how
so my object is small, ball-like, spherical. It has also angles on it. I found myself rattling it as well to see if it makes a noise. It's quite nice to run your fingers across from it because it has quite a lot of gaps and it's quite interesting as a texture. It's quite light to hold. It's very rigid when you squash it. And the temperature is room temperature,
Mhm.
but I don't really see it changing much. It's just very static as a temperature-wise. And can I show the object now?
Wait. Have you used all the movements in order to identify the object and explore it? Is it something from the movements that we are showing that you didn't do, let's say?
I think I didn't really like the contour one. I did it mostly using my fingers.
Mhm.
So it was more of a lateral motion.
Okay.
Because it is so small, I couldn't run my whole hand over it. So I could tell its global shape just by holding it between my two fingers and my thumb.
Okay.
So that was basically the palm of my hand. I couldn't put it in the palm of my hand.
From the information that you have shared, I'm not able to identify the object or imagine what the object is. I don't know if anyone from the audience has any idea what George is holding.
It's very bizarre.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Okay, that's expected. So it's expected not to understand it. Okay.
Can I show you?
Brian asks if it is a golf ball.
It's smaller than a golf ball, but
Smaller than a golf ball. Okay.
It is a ball. It is a ball.
I believe that it's time to show us what you are holding.
Okay, so it's this ball right here.
Okay.
And it's got, I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know where my microphone is it's got a little ball in it as well.
Yeah, it's like a small rattle.
Part of the building set that we
Uh-huh.
have in the office that we do prototyping with.
Okay, that's quite a peculiar object.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Who else would like to go? Okay, Anna.
I could maybe.
Mhm.
Okay. So my object is kind of matte textured. I don't know how to specify.
Something like velvet.
It's not velvety. It's a hard surface with a texture, but not very rough. It's pleasant to the touch. It's kind of matte with a bit of tiny bumps that gives you a sort of a texture. It's room temperature, doesn't change much. Maybe my hand's temperature, but not it's kind of curvy. Not kind of, it's curvy with rounded edges. Small, it's light. Yeah, and a hard surface overall.
Is it a common object or something?
Nowadays, it's kind of common.
Okay, I don't know what it is.
I thought of a USB stick. I don't know why, but maybe I'm wrong.
I thought of a telephone device, but no, still no. Okay.
Whoa.
AirPod case.
Someone is very close.
Okay.
Ozzy just wrote AirPod case. I assume you say it for this, right, Anna?
Okay.
Yes,
So
it's not an AirPod, so not it's a
white and
different
we
brand.
can't see it. Okay.
Okay. It's
It's from recycled material, apparently.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
It's an illusion of an
Yeah.
object. Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else wants to go? Okay. So we did this exercise just to understand the processes of tactile exploration and the information that we want to collect in order to identify an object. Usually these processes are conducted to identify common and everyday objects in our life, and also familiar or unfamiliar. this is not the movements that we are using to explore a tactile aid or a tactile graphic. Most of them, usually they're using lateral motion, static contact, but most of the times you are not able to lift it up and feel its weight. And also, maybe this has to do, in our case, for example, because the tactile representation is a miniature of the artwork, and also it does resemble in materials, but it's something different. So another aspect, the second step, so now we are familiar with the gestures that we are using to identify an object. Let's go through the process of creating or not creating. A major concern and dilemma, the dilemma we find usually to our work is when we are invited to render something inclusive or accessible, we need to make a selection of what things are we are going to convert tactilely. And there are many misconceptions that everything can be transferred into a tactile aid, or it is necessary to have everything tactile aid, but that's not the case. So there is a very useful tool which is called the decision tree, which was developed by the American Foundation for the Blind. And it's very useful to go through it before you decide whether you need to have a tactile graphic or not. So the first question that we are asking ourselves is if the information is sufficient on a verbal description or on a text form in Braille, let's say. If the information that we want to communicate is transferred through verbal description and it is sufficient, then you don't need to create it. If also the information is more perceivable in a text form, better do the text than create the graphic. Usually the tactile graphics cost a lot, and the design process takes a lot of time and has a lot of steps in between. So before going through this process, make sure that you need it. So the other question that we are asking ourselves is if it requires to use visual discrimination or visual perception, because if it's that the case and you're repeating a problem, let's say, you don't need to go through that. Usually when we are going through this decision, we ask ourselves the most important question is the fourth. If the object, the artwork, let's say, is too small, like a jewelry, and you need to enlarge it, or like a small coin that is destroyed and you need to have a bigger representation of it in order to be receptible. Other criteria is if it's too large, if you need to describe a chair, for example, or a whole building, then yes, you need to create a tactile reproduction of this, because you cannot understand it by touching it with your hands. It's too big. If the object also is too fragile or too dangerous, maybe it has nails or it has cutting edges, I don't know, then you need to create a tactile graphic for its interpretation. So I would like to invite you to do this decision tree with an example here. We were faced with this dilemma ourselves back in 2020. We were about to choose from the collection of the Museum of Contemporary Art which artworks were about to render inclusive and by what means. So the budget was very limited, the time was very limited, so we need to make a selection which artworks were about to be created in a tactile form and which not. So from your left, if I'm not mistaken, you see the installation created by Patrick Reynaud. It's called Thessaloniki. It's made of wood and acrylic paint in different shades of blue. Its size is quite big, as you can see. It's 1 meter and 10 centimeters long. Its width it's 80 centimeters, and its height it's 170 centimeters. The other artwork that we have on our right is a composition, a sketch by Victor Brauner, which is called Composition. The size of the paper is 65 to 50 centimeters. So one of these objects is three-dimensional, is an installation, and the other object is ink on paper. Who would like to go through this dilemma and tell us, would you create a tactile graphic or a tactile representation for both of these artworks, for one of them, which of them? Let's go through this process together.
I have a question. Where did you start with your dilemma? Like, what is, okay, let's start.
So the
someone raised their
dilemma
hand.
is that you have limited resources, you have limited time, but not only that, do you really need to create a tactile representation for both of these artworks or not?
I think George wants to talk. I can see he's raising his hand.
Yeah. I think I would let the sculpture be touched. No? I
It's
just
made of
let the
wood,
people
and
touch the sculpture.
so the material is not so fragile.
Yeah, so let them touch the wood. You can repaint it and you can have someone look after it appropriately, or you can put a layer of something on top of it. But I would go with the ink on paper. I think the lines would be a very, very lovely to explore as a tactile aid, as a tactile graphic in front of it. And it's quite small as well. So you can actually make it at the size of the artwork, make it actual size right next to the painting.
Okay, actual size is not usually recommended, but this has a good size to be actual size. The question is, do we need a tactile representation for both of them?
No.
I mean that is the artwork perceptible by touch? If we were allowed to touch them, okay, if we touch the installation, we understand it. If we touch the paper, do we understand it?
No.
No, so there is a very clear direction from one side, okay? So the paper, the ink on paper is not perceptible by the sense of touch, by the sense of smell. A verbal description would be sufficient for the description of this artwork?
No.
Okay.
It has quite a lot of like the lines are quite aggressive and quite not aggressive, but like they're quite characteristic. So I wouldn't know how to start explaining it with words, you know.
Okay, so this is more or less the process that we are going through when we have artworks and we are about to create a tactile object. In this case, the museum director granted permission to touch the original object of the installation. So we approached it in its original. And for the composition of the Victor Brauner, we created a tactile graphic that you are going to see images of it later on. So yeah, maybe sometimes you have limitations, but you always keep that in mind. When it comes to contemporary artworks, you need to have the permission of the artist, or the owner of the estate of the artist. This goes to everything. Even if you want to touch it, even if you want to create a tactile reproduction, copyrights are very important in this work. So make sure that you cover the legal aspects of this process. Also, the installation, it It was also too big to handle. So, and sometimes you need to ask yourself if it is dangerous, because the way it was positioned, one part of it was very high, and it was dangerous when somebody was kneeling and bending their head. Maybe they could bump their head on it. So don't always take care of what you do with your hands, but make sure that it is safe to discover it from other aspects as well. So I'm handing the floor to Christina.
Thank you. So I would like to talk a little bit about the methods that we can use in the production of tactile graphics. I mean, there is a huge variety, but sometimes it's a matter of what you want to translate into touch and what you want to render accessible. And also it is sometimes, actually most of the times, related also to the artwork itself. And this is how you can choose which production method you could use for the tactile graphic. So the first one I will show you is called thermoform or collage. As you can see in the picture on the right, this method, it uses, you can use compatible texture materials that are selected to represent the components of the print graphic. So basically you create the collage with these shapes and in the same materials. And you create a master tactile graphic, which is then copied using a vacuum form process that is called thermoform. So it produces this like layer, like transparent texture layer over the original artwork. And this production method is very commonly used for textbooks, but as well as exhibition catalogs, as you can see here in the picture, in this tactile catalog by Intel Design. Then we have the tooling method that it produces a raised image on paper or aluminium foil, diagrammic foil. You can use specialized tools, and you usually work from the back side of the paper or the foil, and you create the textures, you emboss the textures you want to create, and you get a tactile image on the front. Another very common method of production of tactile graphics is the UV printing. It is also known as UV curable printing, and it uses the UV light, the ultraviolet light, to dry and cure inks on a printed surface. This is a method that we are using quite often because it's relatively, let's say, not costly, and you can have very good color saturation. It is scratch resistant, and especially when we have paintings and we want to render them accessible, it's a very useful method of creating the tactile graphic. And also you can use a variety of a wide range of materials that you can print on. This is actually a small part of the previous artwork that we saw in the dilemma, the Patrick Reynaud, the Victor Brauner artwork. And it's a small part of the tactile aid we produced for it. Of course, another type of production is laser cutting. I'm sure you're quite familiar with the process. It is actually the laser cutter uses a laser to cut and engrave all kinds of materials with precision. That's why we like it. It's quite accurate, and you can you can produce very detailed tactile elements. And for instance, you can also use various types of materials to cut. Here, for instance, we have plexiglass. As you can see, also there are different levels of tactile pieces that you can touch in order to transfer the feeling of the artwork. And here we have another example of another artwork we rendered accessible that is laser cut on wood. And again, we have different layers of textures. Another production method is, of course, 3D printing, where you have to create a model of the artwork. And you can design what you want to print. It's very nice because you can give textures, different textures, and you can see in the picture here, this is an artwork by Maleas. It's from the Municipal Gallery of Larissa, the Katsigras collection, and it depicts a landscape. And we created different levels using 3D printing on PLA plastic to give depth in the picture. Also, we have a combination of methods here, here and here. It's the same combination. You have 3D printed material, and then you have a small part of laser cut on wood that gives you better, like a different texture on the tactile representation, the tactile model. Here it's a bit of a close-up, you can see. And last but not least, this is a very we like this this production method because it's very easy and quite cheap, let's say. So we very commonly use it when we do our tests with our focus group in the process of the design of a tactile art representation or tactile graphic. So we make we use this capsule paper and fuser. Also, you can find it as PF printing and paper. It offers a quicker production, and how it works is you have to get this specific type of paper, and you can print any type of pattern or design you want to use. And when you enter into this specific PF printer, from the heat and the light energy, it causes the dark image to inflate and swell, so it gives a texture. I would like to ask you also if because we sent some small designs that you could print for the people who are in Cyprus. I don't know if anyone actually got this paper.
We can't hear you if anyone is speaking.
Yeah, I have it. I have it.
Okay.
I have it too.
Could you
Nice.
describe a little bit your experience with that paper?
Yeah, it's quite fun. It's I don't know, it's very interesting. It's I was very excited when I first got it, to be honest. It's quite a lot of fun to run your finger across it very quickly, because you can feel all the distinct lines. And yeah, we have the first page, which is just the basic lines. And if you close your eyes and try it out, it really does make quite a lot of sense to have this as an aid for someone who has difficulty. Yeah, it's very lovely. The textures are satin.
I have a question.
Yes, go on.
Do they, So in this paper, the name, the words are also embossed, like you can feel them, but usually for blind people to
Yeah, it
they
doesn't
use
have any use. No,
they
no,
doesn't have any
no.
use. Yeah, I was
This-
wondering because
This is happening because, okay, the process is that you are creating the image digitally, and you print it on the printer with this specific paper using black color. So the areas that are black, they swell. So in the images that we send you, not only the lines, but also the letters were in black. If the letters were a different color, they wouldn't swell. The other way to produce this type of images, instead of printing them on your printer, and make sure that the printer is not heating, because if this paper is heated, is not going to swell, is that you pass the lines with a 7B pencil, a very soft pencil, or a permanent marker. So you create the design with the permanent marker or the very soft pencil. Then you pass the paper through the printer, the thermal printer, and the parts that you have designed with the pencil or the pen swell. But this production method is not recommended for permanent use. It's not durable. If also the paper is overheated, it turns like a popcorn. It opens up like, let's say, yeah, like popcorn.
We had this kind of accidents.
Yeah, and usually after after a certain number of uses, it gets
Fades a bit, it becomes a bit flat.
And it tears, actually. So for us, it is a great method for testing everything before going on production, because all these reproductions cost a lot. And in order to minimize the production costs, we are trying not everything, but the things that we can, we are trying it through this process. And then we apply several quality checks. We are checking everything with the focus group to make sure that everybody's understanding what they are touching. Maybe you need to eliminate more things. We're going to see these things now together. But after several tests, you end up with a design that you can use, and you can say that, okay, now I'm ready to produce my tactile representation. So talking about decisions and design decisions. I don't know if you are tired. I would suggest to go on and maybe finish a little bit earlier. I don't know what you think. Okay.
I think, okay, I guess we can do it.
Okay, so when we are designing, there are a few guidelines that before I go to the design process, I'm going a step back to the selection process, how we select the artworks that are about to be rendered inclusive. Because usually when you enter a museum collection and you see something like 100 artworks and you say, okay, where do I begin? You can't make everything tactile. So what we do is that we collaborate with the curator of the museum to make sure that we have the copyrights of the artwork. We start with that, the legal aspects. If they tell us that, okay, this is, we have the copyright, you can go on with these 10 or 20 pieces of art, then we usually take into consideration the opinion or whatever the orientation and mobility instructor has to say. An orientation and mobility instructor for blind and visually impaired, for those who don't know, is a person that trains blind people and visually impaired to navigate in their everyday life, and also to navigate with the white cane in the streets and their neighborhood. So they usually have a very clear idea on the do's and don'ts, what is going to work and what's not going to work. Here in Thessaloniki, we usually collaborate with Leah Avram. I don't know if you know her. She's an excellent colleague of us. So apart from the mobility instructor, we take into consideration the opinions of the focus group, which consists of persons with that are born blind or have low vision, in order to get an idea how this will work into the spectrum of visual impairment. And also it's of major importance to have a very good idea on the history of art. So the criteria is we are trying to understand if the artwork can be represented haptically. This is related to the complexity of the artwork, the theme, or the complexity of the composition. If the composition is very crowded and has a lot of elements, it is quite difficult to turn it into a tactile graphic. Also, major importance has the artistic genre or the medium. Let's say that performance art or video art are very difficult or impossible to be turned into tactile graphics. We say that usually we identify 3 types of artworks. There are the simple compositions, which are quite simple. The complex compositions that need to be turned into smaller parts, and the highly complicated compositions that cannot be represented in tactile format. A complex image is usually simplified not only in one graphic, but in multiple representations. And here we have an example. So while working in 2021 with the Katsigras collection from Larissa, we decided to use this specific artwork in order to create its tactile equivalent. As you can see, as you can notice, the composition is very, very dense. It has a lot of things, a lot of information. But the good thing is that this type of composition does not have, did not have the, how it is, the 3D element, let's say, the depth or the shadow